How's it going, y'all? Titan Smash MTG, and today we're here with my favorite video of every standard set. This is the 10 new decks for Strixhaven Standard. Now, before we begin, just a few things to note here. Number one, if you're not subscribed to the channel already, please consider doing so. Not going to give a big spiel, but these are my biggest videos I do of every set, and any kind of support and subscriptions I get from this really do help a lot and mean a lot. Number two, we're still doing a giveaway of not one, but 2 Strixhaven bundles. To enter, there's the form below in the description. All you gotta do is sub to the channel and follow me on Instagram. Easy peasy. But let's get on to this and let's look at 10 new decks for Strixhaven Standard. Now, a reminder, when we brew these, we're looking at some new decks and some new archetypes here. I will be doing a video next week showing some improvements you can make to some existing archetypes and decks in Standard already. But for these 10 brews, I want to do something kind of new decks that aren't really seeing play at the top of the meta or anything, new archetypes and that kind of thing. So if you want some improvements to the same old, we will have that later this week. But for now, we try to go out there a little bit and be just a little bit different and off the beaten path here while still making some decks that are pretty competitive and good. So, no more yapping here. Let's look at 10 different decks. Strixhaven looks really sweet to me, and I had a lot of fun brewing these. So, I hope you all enjoy them as much as I've enjoyed making them. So, let's quit yapping. Let's look at these decks. Let's go! Alright, so the first deck I brewed here is a spicy little number. This is Body of Research combo. This deck plays out kind of like a Genesis Ultimatum Temur Shell. But basically, we're using Body of Research, which is the main card in this list. Body of Research is a green, blue, 6 mana sorcery. Create a 0/0 blue and green fractal creature token. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where that is the number of cards in your library. So you're talking about probably a 40/40 or so when this enters the battlefield. No big deal. But with this card, we have quite a few different ways to just one-shot our opponent here. So starting from the bottom, we actually play a whole playset of multiple choice. This is the X and a blue card, where if X equals 1, you scry 1, draw a card. You have all these different options on there. But since we're a ramp deck, we can pretty realistically get up to 5 mana pretty easily, so we can do X equals 4, so we can do all the above. So for 5 mana or 4 mana, 5 mana, we would make a 4/4, we would bounce one of their creatures and scry 1 and draw a card. Not too shabby, good little tempo there. We're playing things like Beanstalk Giant and Cultivate to ramp up, so nothing big there. 2 Storm's Wrath are in the main deck here just to be able to have a board wipe. I considered playing one where you exile a card from a graveyard and whatever damage the converted mana cost was there to do it, you do it that way. But I decided against that and just do 2 Storm's Wrath for now. We're playing 2 Solve the Equation, just a 3 mana sorcery, which is new. Search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle. So this is a good way when we get late game, we can either find our Fling, which we'll talk about for lethal, or a Genesis Ultimatum to possibly hit something and just do some big mana things there. So quite a few uses for that there. So we're actually playing 2 Augment or Pugilist as well. This is the 3 mana 3/3 with Trample. As long as you control 8 or more lands, Augment or Pugilist gets +5/+5. So again, we're a ramp shell. We're ramping up. Late game, this can be a 3 mana 8/8 with Trample, but even early game, it's a respectable body. But also, we have the back of this, which is Echoing Equation. This is 3 blood double blue, so 5 mana sorcery. Choose target creature you control. Each other creature you control becomes a copy of it until end of turn, except those creatures aren't legendary if the chosen creature is legendary. So we could do this with if we have another Tear of the Peaks out, we can make multiple Tear of the Peaks, then play a creature. If we have one of our fractals out, we can make copies of our fractals and do things that way. There's a bunch of different ways to do things with this, but even just on its face, if you hit this off ultimatum late game, you're probably just getting an 8/8 with Trample on the battlefield, which again, with the Tear of the Peaks out, that's 8 to the face. Even without that, an 8/8 with Trample just going to beat faces down and do some damage. Finally, at the very top end, but also kind of bottom of this in the way, we're playing a 2 Magma Opus. This is the 8 mana, so it's 6 blue and a red instant. Magma Opus deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. Tap 2 target permanents, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. Draw 2 cards. That is a mouthful. That is a lot to do there. But the reason we play 2 of this, because also at the bottom here, you can play a blue and a red hybrid, so basically 2 mana, discard Magma Opus, create a treasure token. So this is a way early in the game, if you don't have the mana to cast Magma Opus yet, you're not even close to it, just pay the 2 and discard it to make a treasure token and help that ramp plan out just a little bit more. And then late game, if we draw into it, this is a great spell we can use. So it's kind of got that versatility on both ends of the spectrum there. But basically, this is what we got here. At the top end, we also have our Fling, which you can't forget about Fling, because if we make that Body of Knowledge token, we make our 30 or 40 power creature, just fling into the opponent and have a good day. But the best part about this is if you just ramp right, if you have the mana to do so, and the mana to do this on curve is a little bit difficult, considering Tear of the Peaks is double red, and then Body of Research is triple green, triple blue. But that's a 5 mana spell and a 6 mana spell, so you can just Tear the Peaks into Body of Research and kill the opponent. So multiple different ways to kill people here with this, but a lot of different ways to do it in just one turn. But I like that you can do all this stuff pretty effectively without being too one-sided. I'm not like just going in all in on fling and nothing else. We kind of have a few different ways of attack here to attack the opponent and get them dead. So this deck looks like a really fun one here. I'll be curious to play it and see how it goes, but I think the way just Body of Research seems to have so much potential here, there's going to be something to that card, just a matter of how we play it. But that's what we got here for deck number 1. Let's take a look at the next one. So next up, for those of you who want to go fast, we have Boros Prowess. Now, technically, we don't have Prowess in this set, but anybody who's played with the Monastery Swift Spear, you know what I'm talking about here. But this is essentially a very just spell-heavy, very one-drop heavy creature kind of thing. We're just going aggressive and fast and trying to beat down as quick as you can. So we're playing a whole playset of Clever Luminancer here. This is the white mana 0/1 creature with Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, Clever Luminancer gets +2/+2 to end a turn. So essentially super prowess on this thing. The only bad side is you do have to play a lot of spells, because if not, this is just an 0/1 and nobody wants an 0/1. But we're playing a playset of Defiant Strike in here. Just a quick thing that can buff a creature up and draw a card to cantrip, which is really nice. Also playing a whole playset of Fervent Champion, because Fervent Champion is just gas. It's a very aggressive creature, and with the pump spells we have here, having to have First Strike is really nice too. I'm playing a 2/2 split of Fight as One and Make Your Mark. Make Your Mark being a new card from this set. It's a red-white hybrid, but just a one mana instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 to end a turn. When that creature dies this turn, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So I love that this can be a pump spell early on and kill something, and if you need to trade with something, you're still getting a 3/2 back, which is already a fine body in this kind of shell anyway. We're playing a playset of Shock, because face is the place, and we want to hit the opponent hard. We're playing a playset of Star Pupil, another new card from this set. This is a white mana 0/0, enters the battlefield with +1/+1 counter on it. When it dies, put +1/+1 counters on it on the target creature you control. So any kind of counters it had on it, and it does say it's counters. So say if you're playing some janky deck where you're putting a Death Touch or a Menace counter on it, you could also put that on from Star Pupil onto another creature as well. It looks kind of weird here, but we're playing a Forbidden Friendship. This is just a way to make 2 attacking creatures on turn 2, but it's also a sorcery. So say if we go Clever Luminancer on 1, we can play Forbidden Friendship on 2, make 2 more creatures to apply to the board, and still have our Clever Luminancer being a 2/3 at that time to attack in. So it's really nice there. So another new card we get to play here is Leonin Lightscribe. This is a really cool one here. This is 1 and a white for a 2/2 cat cleric. It has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, creatures you can control get +1/+1 to the end of turn. So you're playing that Forbidden Friendship. This is why you want to have kind of go wide, make a bunch of creatures here, and then anytime you're casting these instant or sorceries, you're not buffing just this creature, you're buffing the whole team. So nice here. Again, you go the 1-drop into this, and then you cast 3 spells. You just have such a crazy board there all of a sudden. It gets super wide. Another 2-drop we're playing here is Chalet, Dean of Radiance. I don't know if I pronounced that first name right, but Chalet is a 1 and a white, 1/1 flying of Vigilance. But you can tap this to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. So not only needs to go wide a little bit with some of our spells and just their overall flux of cheap creatures, but we can also play them. A lot of them have haste anyway, and then we tap this while attacking, and they all get +1/+1 counters on them. So really nice there. I think this fits really well in this kind of shell. At the very top end of this deck, because it's a very cheap deck, we're playing Venerable Warstinger as a 2 of. This is a 1 red and a white, 3/3 Vigilance and Trample. Whenever Venerable Warstinger deals combat damage to a player, you may return target creature with mana cost X or less from the graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of damage Venerable Warstinger dealt to that player. Pretty much all of our creatures are 1 mana or 2 mana, so everything's, as long as even if it gets chumped and still gets a little bit of combat damage through, we'll be bringing one of our 1-drops back, we'll bring our Luminancer back, or a Fervent Champion, but a bunch of different things we need to get back from the graveyard, which is really cool with this thing. So I'm excited to play this one and see how it works out. Also, give it a bunch of pump spells, something that has Vigilance and Trample anyway, just makes combat really scary for the opponent. Finally, at the top end, we're playing 2 of Embercleave. It's a card you may have heard of before. It's pretty good. And the mana base here, we're trying out these Snarls. We'll see how they go, as well as 2 Faceless Haven and the Snow package here. We're an aggressive deck, and sometimes the Faceless Havens can be enough to get that final damage through in the end. So this is a very aggressive, just kind of prowess deck. Again, we're playing 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24 different 1-drops in this deck to go with our 8 different 2-drops. 11 different 2-drops, a couple 3-drops, Embercleave. The deck is cheap, the deck is fast, and we're basically just trying to put power on the board and smash that face. So if you're a fan of the heroic decks back in the day, or maybe some Boros Feather or something like that, I think this deck will be right up your alley. I'm looking forward to playing this one. Let's look at another. So next up, we have a deck that I'll fully admit straight on, I may just be trying to be doing too much here, and this may just be too spicy to actually be good. But this is Mardu Extus. So Mardu Extus kind of plays like a Rakdos or Mardu sacrifice list. We're doing some spicy things here. So we're playing a playset of Archfiend's Vessel. Just a 1/1 with lifelink, but obviously you can bring this back from the graveyard and make it a 5/5 token. So that's pretty nice there. We're playing 2 main deck Claim the Firstborn just to be able to take something from an opponent. We have a few different sack outlets here, so that's all, anybody's been on the other end of a Claim the Firstborn knows how bad that feels. We're playing 4 Village Rites, but not only to sack our own creatures, but also if we steal an opponent's creature, sack it and draw some cards. I'm trying out 2 Fiend Artisan here. Again, I don't know if Fiend Artisan is going to work in this deck, and I may be trying to do too much here, but we're putting a lot of cards in the graveyard in this deck already. Hopefully it's the opponent's stuff we're stealing anyways, but if we have to put our own cards in there, we're at least making the Fiend Artisan a little bit bigger. But we can sack our own things and use the Fiend Artisan to sacrifice them and go grab some creatures we need, like Extus. Again, another deck list is playing a playset of Forbidden Friendship. It's a weird card, but it's just finding your way into a few different decks here. So, whole playset of Forbidden Friendship here. Playset of Mire Triton. Playing 3 of Call the Death Dweller, because there's a lot of creatures we want to bring back. And again, we're playing a playset of Archfiend's Vessel, so Call the Death Dweller is really nice there. We're playing a whole playset of Omen of the Sun because we have all these tokens we're wanting to make. We're trying to put a bunch of tokens on the battlefield because of the backside of Extus we want to use. So between the Forbidden Friendship tokens, Omen of the Sun, Woe Strider coming in and making a token there, and things like Archfiend's Vessel we just don't care to sacrifice, we have a multitude of ways to do this kind of stuff here. Whole playset of Woe Strider, again, if it's a strategy, but also it's just a great card to have. But let's talk about this playset of Extus or Reek Overlord. So the front side of Extus I don't really care about that much, but it's still playable. 1 white, double black, 2 forward, double strike. Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, return non-legendary creature card from your graveyards to your hand. So there's a few different ways we can do things with that and just get back some value creatures from our graveyard, so that's fine. But we're casting this from the back half of it, which is Awaken the Blood Avatar. This is 6 black and a red, so 8 mana total with quotation marks. This is a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each creature sacrificed this way. So we can sack some of the tokens we make, and we're doing plenty of token generation in this deck already. Bottom half of this card, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Create a 3/6 black and red avatar creature token with haste, and whenever this creature attacks, it deals 3 damage to each opponent. So you're swinging for essentially 6 with this thing, even though it's a 3/6. That 3/6 body survives so many things in Standard, which is really nice there. And the good news is it's not really a big cost to sacrifice creatures because we're making so many little tokens and things in this deck anyways, it kind of just works out. I thought about getting real janky and using something like Outlaw's Merriment in this deck. I didn't want to go that far, so instead I've included a playset of Felidar Retreat. So I actually included 2 Felidar Retreat to go with this. Anybody that knows Felidar Retreat knows it's a good grindy card late game. It's a worst nightmare for any kind of Ugin deck on the other side. But if not, we just play our lands, we make more tokens, and again, we can either use those tokens to beat down with, or we can use them to sacrifice fodder if we need to. Also, making a land here to put +1/+1/+1 counters on everything means that all of our tokens we're making, if we don't want to sacrifice them, just go wide, buff the board, and get in damage that way. So a few different avenues of attack here. I thought this was a cool way to use Extus and the back half of it without being all in on it. So again, it kind of feels like a sacrifice deck, but you have multiple different avenues of attack, which is the whole point of this, to make it really cool. So again, maybe it's not good, maybe it's awful, but I think it's a spicy way to try it, and it's going to be one of the first ways I try out this shell. Let's look at another deck. Let's go. Okay, next up is another deck that I'm super proud of, and I think this one is very, very cool. This is Azorious Blink. Already been kind of an existing archetype. It's been seeing some play here and there in Standard. It's one of those decks that always seems to pop up for a week and then disappear because it's not super, super great, but it's really fun. But this one got some pretty neat little toys, well, especially one toy here we want to talk about. Going down the curve, though, we're playing a playset of Charming Prince and a playset of Omen of the Sea. We do play a whole playset of Yorion in this deck. I didn't want to go 80 cards in this thing, so we're playing just 4 main deck Yorion here because we still want to flash all this stuff and blink it in. So a whole playset of that and Omen of the Sea. At the 3-drop slot, we're playing Barian Tolarian Archmage. Just a card that's seen some, very, very little play in Standard, but it's a 3-mana 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target creature, Planeswalker, to its owner's hand. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent was put into your hand from the battlefield this turn, draw a card. So Baron coming in to bounce stuff, or we can bounce our own things. We need to do something like bounce a Skyclave Apparition. That's a really good use of it there. Baron just has multiple different ways to be good in this kill. Playing a whole playset of Elite Spellbinder. We have the Power Apollo on our side. 3/1 flying whenever it enters battlefield. Look at opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell casts away, costs 2 more to cast. So, especially with the Blink's energy going on in this deck, we have multiple different ways to do this, you know, every turn or different turns here. So just Paulo is constantly just coming back down, snapping a card from their hand, and taxing them on it seems legit. 2 Glasspool Mimic here, just to copy anything else on the battlefield if we need to, but also just ban a land if we get desperate there. Skyclave Apparition is an easy 4 of here because that card is gas and it's one we want to play. But let's talk about one I'm super excited to play in this shell. This is a Manifestation Sage. Manifestation Sage is a green-blue hybrid, so hopefully in this deck it's just 4 blue, which that mana cost is a little bit restrictive. I'll definitely give it that. But it is a 4 mana 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So when this comes down, it's going to be a 2/2, and then it's probably something like making a 3/3 or maybe a 4/4 when you cast it, which is already decent enough as is. But also, when we play things like Thoughts in this deck, we can blink it, it comes down, however many cards in your hand, make another token there. So you're constantly just putting more bodies on the battlefield to protect you with this card. So I think this card is one of the coolest cards they revealed in this whole set. Like, I'm very high on this card in multiple shells, but in this shell especially, just being able to blink it seems insane. I'm playing 2 Solemn Simulacrum, just a way to get the lands we need in case we need to get another blue source for that card, but also just a way to ramp up a little bit to a Yorion, make sure we guarantee ourselves that 5th land for the Yorion mana there. We're playing 3 Thassa Deep Dwelling here. It's been a little bit since we played Thassa, but, you know, 6/5 for 4, indestructible. As long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, it's not a creature. And at the beginning of every end step, blink a creature you have. So whether we're blinking our Elite Spellbinders to look at the hand and take stuff from it, maybe we're blinking our Manifestation Sages here to make more bodies, just a bunch of different stuff we can do here. And finally, to tie all this off, we are playing 2 Semester's End in the main deck here. Semester's End, 3 and a white, so 4 mana instant. Exile any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of the next end step, return each of them to the battlefield under its owner's control. Each of them enters the battlefield with additional +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature, and an additional loyalty counter if it's a planeswalker. So we get all those ATBs there already. If we have a Yorion on the battlefield, we can do it all again. There's just so much potential with this deck to make so many triggers go crazy here. And then we have, you know, it's blue-white, so if your sideboard you need to have a bunch of different, you know, negates and mystical disputes and counter magic, you can do so. But I just love all the versatility this deck has as far as finding an answer, having that hand disruption, making a bunch of bodies on the battlefield. Just, there's so many different things this deck can do. I think this was one of the sweet ones here. I'm super excited to play this one. Semester's End seems like a gas card in this list. And again, Manifestation Sage I think is going to be a super fun card to play with. So the next deck here looks very familiar already. This looks very similar to the mono white aggro deck that's already in standard, but this one has a different avenue in it. This is more of a Taxes deck, and you'll see why. So this list is playing a playset of All Seed of Life Bounty, playset of the Giant Killer, nothing you haven't seen there in these kind of decks already. Just a good overall card in these kind of lists, but we have a theme that you'll start seeing here. We're playing a whole playset of Luminarch Aspirate, again, just like the mono white decks do already. We're playing just 2 Drannith Magistrate in the main. Drannith Magistrate, your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. We're playing this because at the 3-drop slot, we're playing a whole playset of Elite Spellbinder. This is Paulo's card for winning, which is very cool, but this is the 3 mana, flying, 3/1. Whenever Elite Spellbinder enters the battlefield, look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast sway costs 2 more to cast. So not only does this tax the opponent by making the spell 2 more, but if you have a Drannith Magistrate out already, and you can just curve Drannith Magistrate into this, Drannith Magistrate says they can't cast that spell because it's not in their hand. So it's a cool little combo there, a 2-card combo to kind of make it where they can't play those cards that you exile. Now obviously they can remove the Drannith Magistrate, but unless they do, Elite Spellbinder is just taking that card from their hand and exiling it. We're also playing a playset of Archon of Emeria. This is the 2/3 flying that non-basic lands your opponents control into the battlefield tapped, and each player can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. So again, just kind of limiting the opponent's options for what they can do, not letting them do very much to us here. We're playing 2 Maul the Skyclaves because we still want to beat down. This deck still just has the aggression to be able to go over the top, and Maul the Skyclaves plays really well with this Elite Spellbinder, making it a 5/3 with first strike and flying and just put a really aggressive clock on. We're playing a playset of Redain here. Redain is still an all-star powerhouse card. And again, you want to kind of avoid board wipes and things in this list. Redain taxing them makes it do so. Between Drannith Magistrate, Archon, Elite Spellbinder, Redain, we have multiple different avenues and ways of just making the opponent have hard things to cast. We have our Skyclave Apparitions for removal here. I thought about putting the Strict Proctor in this deck, which makes every ETB cost 2 more to happen. But that would kind of shut down some of the stuff in our deck too, so I didn't want to go that heavy on it and hurt ourselves. But still, a lot of cool stuff we're doing in this deck, and I think this is a really neat way to go about it. You still have that overall white aggressive plan here, but now you have a way to tax them as well, and I think that's really cool because I like making the opponent's life hell. So hopefully this is a good way to do it. Be a good aggressive deck that still makes it very hard to play around for the opponent. We get some hand disruption here. We have removal on the stick and creatures. We have ways to fly over the competition and get the win. So all in all, that seems like a pretty good recipe for success to me. Let's look at another deck. So next up, we got a list. You may have seen this on Versus Live already. This is actually my submission that I submitted to them on Twitter, and they played it. Corey Ballmaster played this. Corey, the man, the myth, the legend. This is Boros Winota. You know, every set I got to make a Winota shell. It's a problem. I can't help it, and I don't want to help it, so here we are. But this deck is playing, it's a Winota shell, so let's just, you have your Stonecoil Serpents, your Seed of Last Bounties, and your Selfless Saviors here. So all these different non-creatures there at the 1-drop slot. At the 2-drop slot, we're playing 2 Chalet, Dean of Radiance. Again, this is the 1 white, 1/1 with Flying and Vigilance. Tap it, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that entered the battlefield under control this turn. I like being able to make our stuff bigger as we cast it later on in the game. But also, once you attack with Winota, get all those triggers, and then before damage, tap this, put 1/1 counters on all of it. That's gas, baby. And that's straight gasoline. Again, another deck list here that plays 4 of Elite Spellbinder. A fantastic hit off Winota. A lot of times with Winota shells, like, you know, they're kind of holding up that removal, or they have a board wipe in hand where it's like, okay, they have to take the hit here, but then there's going to Extinction Event you or board wipe you somehow next turn. Well, if you hit with Elite Spellbinder here, you can take a look at their hand, take that land from them, or that removal spell, be good to go. Whole playset of Skyclave Apparition here, because again, Skyclave is just kind of gas, and it triggers Winota. We're playing a whole playset of Venerable Warsinger here. It's a card, you know, again, 1 red and a white, 3/3, Vigilance and Trample. This is really cool in this shell because we're playing the playset of Selfless Savior. We're playing the playset of Seed of Last Bounty. So not only is this a Spirit Cleric, which can trigger Winota, but also the Alseid and the Selfless Savior can keep it alive, or it can keep your Winota alive. And with this Venerable Warsinger, when it's dealing damage, it's very easy to just grab those back, put them right back on the battlefield, and kind of start a loop there. So every time Venerable Warsinger attacks, you're just keeping your Selfless Saviors, you're keeping your Seed of Last Bounties alive, and just keep on going to town. So I think this is really, really nice, especially in a deck that wants so hard to protect a Winota once it resolves. This just helps you do so. It helps you trigger Winota. Just pulling double duty there. But let's talk about some big hits we have here off Winota. Obviously, we've already talked about the Elite Spellbinder taking cards from their hand. Huge card we got here for this set is Blade Historian. Blade Historian is a 4 mana, all in red-white hybrid colors, so which are both in your colors already. So basically a 4 mana 2/3 human cleric, attacking creatures you control have double strike. So all these cards having double strike is super, super nice. Again, Chalet, when we have here, putting +1/+1 counters on everything, really helps whenever you have double strike. That's so much more power added to the board there. So this deck can just get out of control really, really fast. Finally, we have the Winotas. We have the Showdown of the Scald as a 2 up at the top end, and then 2 Kenrith the Return Kings as a hit off Winota. So obviously all of our cheap creatures here are trying to enable Winota. Then our more expensive ones here, we're hoping to hit off Winota, put on the battlefield, do the thing. But I love Winota shells. Obviously, I've got a problem with it because I make a Winota deck for about every standard. But Winota is just such a cool card to me. I know a lot of people absolutely hate it, and I get it. But I think having something that can give all your attacking creatures double strike in this kind of shell is just super, super cool. So Blade Historian and Elite Spellbinder are some very nice adds to get to this deck. And I think something like Venerable Warsinger or something that can make the consistency of this deck be really, really nice. So that's Boros Winota. That's what we got. If you hate it, I'm sorry. But if you love it, let's go. Let's take a look at another deck list. So next up, we got another Temur brew here. This is Temur Superfriends. Now, I don't know if this one's super good, to be honest, but it does a lot of cool things, and I think it has some potential to do some really cool stuff if we can actually get it to work out right. Early on, we just want to ramp, so we have a whole playset of Wolfwillow Haven and a whole playset of Cultivate there. Nothing too crazy. We're just trying to ramp up early on and get our mana, situated as much as we can. We're playing 2 Kasmina Enigma Sage. This is a 3 mana, so 1 green and blue for a 2 loyalty Planeswalker. With a static text of each other Planeswalker you control has the loyalty ability of Kasmina Enigma Sage. +2, scry 1. -X, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Put X +1/+1 counters on it. So put some bodies on the battlefield, not bad. -8. Search your library for an instant or sorcery card that shares a color with this Planeswalker. Exile that card, and then shuffle. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So at the top end of this deck, we're playing a whole playset of Alrund's Epiphany, a whole playset of Genesis Ultimatum, and 3 Magma Opus. Again, we've already described this in another one here, but Magma Opus, we can just use the 2 mana to make a treasure token early on to ramp a little bit if we need to. But Alrund's Epiphany, especially as much as we ramp here, not that hard to get to. And having Planeswalkers and taking an extra turn is really, really nice. So I like that we can naturally do Alrund's Epiphany things, but if we get Kasmina and be able to ultimate, we can also go find it and get a guaranteed turn that way. We're playing 2 Conjurix Command here. This is 1 green and a blue instant. Choose 2. Return target creature or Planeswalker to its owner's hand. Counter target artifact or enchantment spell. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature, or target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into the library. So for this card, I imagine we're using the top 2 modes of this more than anything. Bouncing a target creature or Planeswalker to the owner's hand can be nice tempo, and countering something like a target artifacts. You know, people are playing Showdown of the Skulls, the Great Henge. There's some very real cards that you want to counter in Standard there. So getting to do both of these for just 3 mana seems really, really nice. But the other 2 abilities can come up if you're using your Fractal tokens, put some counters on those. Maybe make your Vorinclex bigger, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So we have that. We're playing a whole playset of Rowan, Scholar of the Sparks, mainly because it has the backside, so we have 2 different cards we can really play off this, so the legendary rule doesn't come into effect quite as much. So Rowan is 2 and a red for a 2 loyalty Planeswalker. Instant and sorcery spells you control cost 1 less to cast. +1, Rowan, Scholar of the Spark deals 1 damage to each opponent. If you've drawn 3 or more cards this turn, she deals 3 damage to each opponent instead. And we're playing things like this in this deck like Teferi, which can allow you to draw extra cards, so that is a possibility. -4, you get an emblem with whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may pay 2. If you do, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. As I said, we're already playing some pretty wild spells in this deck already, so being able to copy those is just game winning. I actually watched Corey get to ultimate this thing and be able to copy an Alrund's Epiphany on Versus Live. It was pretty sick. The backside of this is Will, Scholar of the Frost. This is 4 to blue for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. +1, if the 1 target creature has base power and toughness 0/2 until your next turn. -3, draw 2 cards. Not too shabby. -7, exile up to 5 target permanents. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller creates a 4/4 blue and red creature token. The ultimate on that one's kind of janky, but there are ways you can just blow up people's lands if you really wanted to. But basically, we have a lot of different ways to play these kind of things. It's nice that these both cards kind of work together and synergize to make things a little bit cheaper. And again, making our big top-end spells here, like our Alrund's Epiphany or Magma Opus cheaper, is really nice. We're playing 2 Teferi, Master of Time. Not only is getting to activate this on the opponent's turn really nice, but also with Kasmina giving everything its static ability there, you can start getting that Teferi up really quick to its ultimate, that -10 to take 2 extra turns after this one. If you have all these Planeswalkers on the battlefield and you're getting to take 2 extra turns, you're just going to get to pop these off and ultimate all these kind of things and just do some big pick damage. So I think it's a really cool way to do things there. Finally, at the top end, we're playing Vivian, Monster's Advocate. Just a way to actually make a board presence beside the Alrund's Epiphany tokens and besides the Vorinclex. It's pretty nice there. And again, getting to plus it up and do its thing there seems really nice. We're playing 2 Vorinclex, and I'm not sure if I should be playing this or not because it is the only creature I'm playing in the deck. So if you're playing against something that has like black removal, they're going to be holding that black removal probably all game until they finally get to use it on this Vorinclex because it'll be a dead card in a lot of circumstances. But Vorinclex, especially if you hit this stuff off of Genesis Ultimatum, you can just pop off ultimates left and right with everything because it comes in, doubles the counters on all their Planeswalkers there. Seems like a really good way to do this. And again, seems like a way to push up your Planeswalkers to get close to ultimating, making all their abilities do the thing. Finally, we have that playset of, we've already talked about it, but the playset of Alrund's Epiphany, playset of Genesis Ultimatum, and the playset of Magma Opus. So is this deck good? Who knows? We haven't played with it. This is doing some very cool things, I think. I'm a little bit skeptical myself on if this is actually playable or not. Obviously, you have a hard time kind of protecting yourself is the big thing. Now, these cards do have ways to protect themselves and put some bodies on the battlefield and all that. But, you know, if somebody goes really wide and aggressive on you fast, I imagine this deck would have a really hard time with it. That's why we play these out, to see if it's viable, to see if it's a worthwhile strategy. So, Temur Superfriends, that's what we got. Let's take a look at another one. So next up here is one of the very first decks I brewed for Standard Season. This is Orzhov Aggro. If you follow me on Twitter, you've already seen this list to some degree, but I've changed it up a little bit. So this is a really aggressive deck. We actually play 14 different 1-drops. We have a whole playset of Archfiend's Vessel, a playset of Giant Killer, playset of Star Pupil, and 2 Valentine, Dean of the Vein. Let's talk about Valentine, because this one I think has been overlooked, but it actually has a lot of just really good base stats for a 1-mana creature. So Valentine is a black mana for a 1/1 Menace and Lifelink Vampire Warlock. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. When you do, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 1/1 black and green past creature token with when the creature dies, you gain 1 life. So being a 1-mana 1/1 with Menace and Lifelink on its own is already not that bad for Valentine. But the bottom part's actually really nice. Making sure that every creature your opponent controls, when it dies, it goes into exile. That can save you a lot of headache down the road, and just getting those things exiled and out of the way is cool. But also late game, if you need a little bit of a mana sink here, every time your opponent's creatures dies, you pay that 2 and you get a 1/1 pest token. It's nothing super exciting, but it is something that's playable and kind of nice. So I think Valentine is a 2-of, since it's legendary, is a good way to start here, but I like it in the shell. At the 2-drop slot, we're playing a whole playset of Clarion Spirit. Again, we're playing so many 1-drops, I think it should be very easy on turn 3 to be able to just play multiple spells, make some tokens, and go wide here. We're playing 2 Dire Tactics for removal. This could be a bunch of different things here, but I still think Dire Tactics is just such a good removal spell for 2 mana being an instant there, and we have enough humans where the life loss part won't really matter. We're playing a playset of Luminarch Aspirant just to make everything bigger here if we can. We're playing 3 of Shell, or Chalet, Dean of Radiance. I'm going to pronounce it wrong every time. But again, I love this card, obviously. This is like the 3rd or 4th deck I've listed this card in. But just having something that you can go wide with and then put counters on everything seems super, super good. Another new 2-drop we play is Silver Quill Silencer. We're playing a whole playset of this. I think this card is super cool. Silver Quill Silencer is a white and a black, so a 2-mana 3/2. Human Cleric, a Silver Quill Silencer enters the battlefield. Choose a non-land card. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with the chosen name, that opponent loses 3 life and you draw a card. So this is really nice if you're going against, say, Adventures. On 2, you drop this, you can name Stomp. So that way, even if they stomp your creature and kill it, they lose 3 life and you're drawing a card. If you're going against, say, an Emergent Ultimatum deck and you're afraid of them casting that, or maybe you're afraid of them casting an Extinction Event or Shadow's Verdict, you basically do your best meddling and mage impression with this card. And the beauty of this is it kind of stacks. So say if you have 2 of these out, you can either name different cards or you can name the same card. Say you name the same card and you have 2 of these out and they cast it, they lose 6 life and you draw 2 cards. So Silver Quill Silencer, a 3/2 for 2 is already in a nice aggressive shell in here, but being able to have that versatility to be able to kind of pick things out of their hand in that way is really cool too. Now you'll see this red card here, and this may look out of place. We're actually not playing the red side of this at all unless we get really desperate. I did include 1 Sabai Triome in this thing just in case that we could play this card, but let's take a look at the back side. So we're probably not going to be playing Plarg, Dean of Chaos, so we actually want to be able to use the 3-mana to play Augusta, Dean of the Ord. Augusta is 2 and a white for a 1/3. Other tapped creatures you control get +1/+0. Other untapped creatures you control get +0/+1. Whenever you attack, untap each creature you control, then tap any number of creatures you control. So if you look at Shale there, we go to attack there, we can go ahead, attack. Before that trigger hits there, tap it to put +1/+1 counters on everything. Then we can untap everything. Then we can tap the card again. So we're actually putting 2 +1/+1 combat. +1. So we're actually putting... Got tongue-tied there. You're putting 2 +1/+1 counters per combat there on your creatures there with Chalet, however its name is there. So I think it's actually really cool there. Plus, is how we're going wide here anyway, so giving all attacking creatures +1/+0 really adds to the clock and aggressiveness of this deck. Finally, we're playing 2 Agadeem's Awakening just to be able to get some of these creatures back from the graveyard if they die. We're playing 2 Call of Death Dwellers because, again, they're so small and it's going to die, so getting it back and putting counters on it is really nice. And I'm trying out 2 Silver Quill Command. So Silver Quill Command is 2 white and a black sorcery. Choose 2. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains flying at the end of turn. Return target creature with mana value 2 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. Target player draws a card and loses 1 life, or target opponent sacrifices a creature. In this kind of deck, it seems like every single mode of this is something we may want. It just depends what. Target creature getting +3/+3 and flying could be really nice to close out a game. We kind of whittle people down. Now we can send one of our creatures up in the air, fly away to get that lethal damage in there. Maybe you just want to get a card back from the graveyard into the battlefield. You can do that. You can draw a card and lose a life if you just need a little bit more gas, find that last little piece of interaction there. Or the opponent has a blocker and you get out of the way. Maybe they got something like an Elder Garderoth. They sacrifice it. You get in there. So I think Silver Quill Command is a very nice top end of this deck. But as a whole, just a very nice aggressive shell here that goes pretty wide, does some damage, and has some versatility to really be able to put the damage on early on, but also be resilient and make a way to rebuild the board if you get wiped or you have things killed, because it's going to happen. So that's Orzhov Aggro. Again, one of the first I brewed for this preview season, but one I'm excited to play. So next up, I had to make a deck where we're using Professor Onyx somewhere. It wouldn't be a new standard set if we didn't use one of the biggest planeswalkers in the set. So we have some Esper Yorion. So going over the curve with this one here, 2 Bloodchief's Thirst in the main deck here. Easy, simple removal, nothing new there. We got a couple of new very nice removal spells in this deck though. So one new removal spell we got here is Vanishing Verse. This is white and black, so a 2 mana instant, exile target monocolored permanent. In a set with a lot of multicolored stuff in here, this is a little bit sketchy to me. However, there's so many existing just big, powerful monocolored things in standard already that I think just a 2 mana exile effect for these is fantastic. So this is one of those, obviously you could board it out against certain decks if it's bad. But there's alright, I mean, there's mono red, there's mono green, there's mono white. That's already really good in standard. Vanishing Verse just takes care of everything in the deck for 2 mana. It seems insane. So Yorion deck, so we're playing 2 Glass Casket here. We are playing a playset of Heartless Act, playset of Maze Mind Tome, 2 Birth of Malidus. Didn't want to go in the whole playset there because the card's kind of mopey sometimes, but it gets your mana and sets you up, does things. 2 Midnight Clock, a way to just kind of provide that clock, pun intended, to refill the hand late game, but also be another blue source, a little bit of ramp, all that kind of stuff there. Whole playset of Saw It Coming, whole playset of Behold the Multiverse. 2 Arcana Sons of Grace is not too bad, especially when we have all the enchantments and artifacts that we have here. Let's take a look at another card we have here. This is Sinister Dominance. This is 3 in a black instant. You may pay 1 in a black instead of playing the spell's mana cost. If you pay 1 in a black, an opponent may draw a card. Exile target creature or planeswalker. So for 4 mana, this kind of does your Vraska's Contempt thing with better mana. It's Eat to Extinction event sort of deal. But I really like that for 1 in a black, you can still exile anything you need to. Now, the opponent will draw a card, and obviously that's a drawback. But it's nice to be able to hold this up and have that option just in case it's available to you. So I think the versatility and the modal effect of this kind of in a way is really nice. I think something the control mages will really appreciate. Going back here, we have a whole playset of Extinction event. Being able to just have a one-sided board wipe and keep your tokens alive and that kind of thing is nice if you need to. We're playing 2 Ashiok Nightmare Muse, a whole playset of Elspeth Conquers Death, 3 more Yorion, so we still have the 4 Yorion total, the 1 in the companion slot, 3 in the main, 2 Dream Trawler. Dream Trawler is still just a house, hard to deal with. But finally, at the very top in here, we're playing 3 Professor Onyx. Professor Onyx is 4 double black, so a 6 mana planeswalker. It has a static ability. It says Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. This is actually really big because a lot of times when you play these big planeswalkers, sometimes you can just kind of die and that's the game right there. But this thing protects itself with this -3. It draws cards with that plus side. And then anytime you're reacting to the opponent's board, you're slowly just turning the favor in your case. You know, you're doing the damage to them. You're gaining life on your side. This thing can just really run out of control. I think it's actually a pretty sweet card. Really old school design. Feels like the Planeswalkers were 3 or 4 years ago, which means it's not busted, but I do think it's good. The +1, you lose 1 life. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. -3, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures that players control. And then -8, each opponent may discard a card. If they can't, they lose 3 life. Repeat this process 6 more times. That is spicy. So we'll see if Professor Onyx is actually good enough or not. I think playing as the 3 of here is okay in this deck. Plenty of interaction, plenty of removal, plenty of ways to affect the board here and gain some life. So I think Professor Onyx is kind of sweet in this shell. We'll see if it works out or not. But as a whole, that's what we got. Your typical Esper Yorion list. Nothing too crazy there. Still playing 32 lands with everything there. So I think this will work out okay. So yeah, is it evil? Yeah, that's what Esper does, but we'll see if it's actually good or not. Alright, and the last deck of the day here, another deck that I just always get suckered into. It always does really good for the pre-release events, but then I bring it in actual standard and it sucks. We have some Selesnya Counters, a deck that I'm just always tied to. This deck, though, has Toski. I mean, none of my other decks had Toski, so this one will actually be good. But basically, this is very similar to the ones we had before. Not a lot of new cards in this deck. We'll go ahead and talk about the new cards really quick, because this won't surprise you. Chalet, Dean of Radiance, makes its way into another deck list of mine. But again, getting to tap this, put up to 1, maybe 2 +1/+1 counters on everything if you have Conclave Mentor out there. Let your deck go wide, because usually these kind of decks you don't really care about going wide. You just want to stack counters on things and kind of go tall instead. This list here, though, we're playing things like Jaspar Sentinel and Clarion Spirit. As you've seen the Toski builds already in Standard, this allows you to go kind of wide, kind of fast. Chalet lets you put the counters on everything and get rewarded that way. Conclave Mentor, doubling the counters of everything is really nice. We still have ways to go big and tall with things like Stonecoil Serpent, Swarm Shamblers can grow, your Wildwood Scourges we're playing 2 of there. This deck has the potential to go wide and tall, which is really cool. We're playing 2 Inscription of Abundance, a card that's always been overlooked, I think. But being able to do any of these kind of things, for 5 mana, doing them all especially, putting some counters on there, fighting a creature, and then gaining some life, that's everything you want to do. But finally, we're playing 3 of Toski, Bearer of Secrets here at the top end. So, you know, it's a simple deck. You go wide, you go fast, you go tall, you just get big and just overwhelm the board and kill people. So, is it good? I don't know. Again, this one doesn't play a ton of new cards, so I'm sorry it's not super exciting in that way. But I do think Star People is another one. This is kind of underrated. I know it's just a 1 mana 1/1 when it comes on, but that having the counter going somewhere else whenever it dies, and then if you need to put other counters on other creatures, it just does a lot of cool things for you. So I actually think Star People is a very nice 1-drop addition to this deck. Alright, y'all, so that's the 10 decks for Strixhaven Standard. As always, I hope you enjoyed. These are always my favorite decks to make. These are so fun, and I really enjoy making these videos. So hopefully y'all play them too. If there's any decks you're working on in the comments, please let me know, because as a brewer, I love seeing what other people come up as well. And if there's things you think we should change or add to mine, let me know. Hope y'all enjoyed this. Thank you so much for the support. Again, these decks take a lot of work, a lot of time to make, but it's worth it, and I just really get a lot of joy to see y'all enjoy this as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the support, y'all. Let's go Strixhaven high. Woo! Let's go.